have that same sound. I have, yeah. I had some people over the other day, and somebody had the sound of when my refrigerator doors are open. There's a certain beep that, like, if it didn't shut, so every time they got a text, I was looking at my fridge thinking it was open. Audio test, checking, 1, 2, 3, audio test. August the 11th, 2020, audio check. Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead, can you hear us?
Hey, are you streaming again on Twitter? It's Tom Mustin. How you doing?
Yeah, it's being streamed. Being streamed on Twitter. Also, Channel 7's carrying it as well.
Is it on right now, though?
We're getting ready to start. Yeah. We haven't hit Twitter yet. No, we haven't started on Twitter. We'll start in just a minute here, though. Okay, and then hold the questions till the end, please. Okay? Till the third speak. Okay, right after the mayor's done, then we'll do questions. All righty? Everybody good? Channel 7, you good? Your audio's good? Yeah, we're starting in about. It's going to go out right away.
Okay, so I'll see it on your website, on your Twitter page, right?
Yes, sir. You will.
Okay, cool.
All right, we're going to start now. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll go ahead and start this press conference. Chief Payson will be our first speaker. Chief, you want to come on up?
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it as we need the community's help. We need the public's help in addressing a shooting that occurred on Sunday, as well as addressing an increase in violent crime in our city. As far as the events that occurred Sunday afternoon, at approximately 4:30, the Denver Police Department received several calls regarding a shooting. Off of West Byers, officers responded. They located several individuals who had been shot and were able to work with the Denver Health Paramedic Division to get 6 individuals located into the hospital. 3 additional folks were able to get themselves to medical care for a total of 9 individuals who were shot in one incident. This incident had a 3-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old that were shot in the park. This is completely unacceptable, and we'll talk about it a little bit more here in a second. This event was a gathering of family and friends in the park. We believe that there was a music video that was also taking place at the same time. Thanks. And what I can tell you at this moment is that no arrests have been made. However, the investigators are making significant progress in this case. When we talk about asking for the public's help, not only do we need the community to share information that they may have about this incident, but we are also seeking information from the victim's family and the victim's friends. We need additional information as it has been limited so far. We would ask that anybody that has any information on this particular case to get a hold of us at the Crime Stoppers number, 720-913-STOP. Not only did we have the 3, 11, and 12-year-old that were shot in a park at a family gathering, we also had 3 17-year-olds as well as 3 adults, all of which are expected to survive. This is not okay to have young people harmed in our city like this. It is not okay to have a surge in violent crime in Denver. It's not okay that this surge in crime is impacting our vulnerable populations. There has been an increase in violent crime across the country. However, we, the people of Denver, need to stand up. We need to work together because it is not okay that we have an increase in our city. With that said, we'll make ourselves available for more questions, but I'd like to bring up Dr. John Nicoletti to talk about some of the impacts that we see with COVID and other crises that we're dealing with that potentially are contributing to this uptick in violence. John.
What I want to talk about for the next few minutes is just kind of looking at it from a psychological standpoint. To begin with, we're really in uncharted territory. There's no blueprint for what we're dealing with. You've probably heard the term new normal a lot. What it is a perfect storm caused by some major triggering events. Obviously, the first one is the pandemic. It's a protracted event, and it's ongoing, and it's creating a variety of different stressors in people. First of all, the length of it just keeps going. Secondly, it's creating some interesting reactions in families. You all are here. That means you're essential workers. Your family members may not be. You may have somebody that was an essential worker there at home. What we're seeing there is the family members are concerned that, are you going to bring COVID home to us? Are you going to contaminate us? We're dealing right now with schools. Not quite sure how to do it. Is it going to be remote? Is it going to be hybrid? What it's going to be? So a lot of uncertainty. What we've been seeing during the spring is, with the remote learning, a lot of frustration. Teachers don't necessarily know how to do it. Parents don't know how to help, and kids don't quite know how to deal with it. So that's the first event. Now, what's the intersection? And that's kind of the racial tension that developed as a result of some incidents. Now we got these two things going, and we got kind of no profile, no roadmap for any of these things. And what's happening is violence begets violence. Going back in time, and for those of you that are around, to Columbine shooting, April 20th, 1999, what we started there and what we've seen is what's called the Columbine contagion. And that's where, as we looked at shooters who attack schools and even workplaces, high percentage of them either made pilgrimages to Columbine or they referred to it. So, kind of following up on what the chief is talking about, we don't want to have what's called a Denver contagion, where people look at this, hey, this is a community where you can get away with things. It's a tough problem. It's getting out of hand, and no one person can solve it. It's going to be a group response to it all. In terms of preventing this stuff, you have kind of two categories of characters. You have what we call the detectors. Those are the folks that are out there in the community that are going to be seeing behaviors of concern. Then you have another category, and these are the individuals that can be the preventers or the disruptors or the diverters. They can actually help stop the behavior. They can help mitigate it. And you got to have both. So if you don't have the detectors, and the folks who could actually change the problem aren't going to be able to intervene. And in order to do that, where problems are at right now, it's really a community effort. You're not going to be able to have one entity solving this problem. You got to have folks working together and not being antagonistic. And I think the mayor's going to get up and talk about some interesting programs in that standpoint. Sir?
Thank you, Dr. Nicoletti, and thank you for being here. I want to thank the chief as well, Chief Pazin, because I think his message is right on target with regards to this troubling trend that we are seeing here in our city. What's most troubling about it is what he outlined in terms of the impact on our kids. What happened Sunday is absolutely unacceptable. Someone indiscriminately firing into a gathering in the park, notwithstanding who was there, who may have been hit, injured, and possibly killed by their decision, is absolutely unacceptable. What's happening in our community right now with regards to this growing trend of violent crime creates a sense of fear, creates a sense of lack of safety and instability and quite frankly results in disinvestment and in terms of one's not only economically but one's social and personal well-being along with their families. We will continue to keep the children, the young people and their families in our thoughts and prayers. But along with what Dr. Nicoletti just said, we will refuse to accept that this is a new normal in the life of this city, one city that has been considered for a very long time one of the safest cities in the country. I'm asking each and every one of us who call this place home to be accountable, to take ownership of our streets and our neighborhoods, to put our children's safety and well-being first, and help us to reverse this trend. The Denver Police Department is increasing their efforts to stop these acts. We need people to put their guns down. We need community members to step forward. We need family members and friends to sound the alarms. And as the chief pointed out, you can do that anonymously. And it's very important that we make sure that we get some reports and assistance in helping to solve these crimes. You know, weeks before COVID pandemic arrived, I directed members of my administration to work with youth and youth-serving organizations to create a community-driven plan to support and create healthier and safer environments for our children and youth in Denver. The work of the Youth Violence Prevention Task Force, or Action Table, is already underway, tackling 2 public health crises impacting our youth. Of course, COVID, and now the rising trend of youth violence. We know these challenges must be addressed from a public health standpoint or perspective, and this is what I talked about in the State of City address. This is not just a law enforcement issue. In fact, it's more of a community issue. Our approach to helping to solve these challenges, community-led and youth-informed. We've had numerous conversations with young people. The recent launch pop-up safe zone activities for youth is just one recent example of community action that we have been able to support. In the last couple of weekends, these activities have provided an outlet for our kids, and we'll do more of them. In fact, we're prepared to continue to invest more resources for what is expected to be 20 or so events on weekend nights, and if all goes well, we hope to expand the program next year in the city. But let me say this again, none of this is sustainable without further and greater diligent community ownership and support. We're calling on, this is a clarion call for the entire community, to step forward, to be a partner with law enforcement, to be a partner with everyone else, to be eyes and ears if we're going to reverse this trend that we are seeing to ensure the health and safety of every person in this city, for every future of every child in this city, and the future that they deserve. We have to step forward. So I want to encourage folks to use the Crime Stoppers hotline, as the chief laid out, 720-913-7867. It's worth reporting. You can be anonymous. We need the community's help. This is our community, and we refuse to surrender to those who decide to perpetrate violence in our community. Thank you. Chief?
A couple of themes here. We need to emphasize that the police department cannot do this alone. We need the community's help. We need the public to help in public safety. We need to address the increase in gun violence. We can do this by gun ownership being responsible. If somebody purchases a gun owner, that they properly store and lock those guns. Unfortunately, this year we have seen an increase in stolen guns. Through August 6th, we have 422 guns that have been stolen in our city. That's nearly 100 additional guns from what we saw last year. Last year, year to date, through that same time period, we had 325. weapons, guns are ending up on our street. They're ending up in the hands of young people. They're ending up in the hands of people that are causing harm to our community, and we need to do something about it. We certainly can do something by being responsible gun owners and preventing these weapons from getting in the hands of people that should not own or possess them. Again, a safe community is done in cooperation and collaboration with the community itself, and we stand ready and willing to work with our community in order to help the people of Denver and increase safety here in our city. With that, we'll open it up for questions. I saw Vicenta's hand first. Again, we believe this was a gathering of family and friends, and that there may have been a music video that was being produced at the time. That is information that we currently have, but we're seeking additional information to help us further this case. Our Major Crimes Division, the FAST team, has been working tirelessly on this particular incident, working to address any and all leads that we have to try to gather more information. As we said earlier, we need more from the family and friends that were involved. We need cooperation. That is not only how we solve these crimes, but it's also how we prevent crimes like this in the future. Again, we look at these things with our eyes wide open. We are looking at all and every bit of information out there. It would be too soon to say anything along those lines. Tony?
Evan, we heard you talk a lot about details, but I've not heard anything about motive. Do you have a motive? Are you close to a motive?
Again, too soon to tell on that. We are very open-minded about this investigation. We have to be open-minded about this investigation to ensure that we get as much detail, as much evidence, as many witnesses as possible before we could ever drill down a particular motive for this situation.
Twice that the family does not appear to be cooperating. Can you help us understand what that dynamic is and what's happening? Because it would seem like a family would want to get the person or people responsible for this.
Tony, you're exactly correct. If we have a 3-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old that is hurt by gun violence, we need all the assistance and cooperation that we can get. That is completely unacceptable to take place in our city. Aggravated assault firearm, somebody that, a non-fatal gunshot, that is either good luck or bad luck that separates that situation from being a homicide. It is unacceptable that we have a 3-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old that was shot. And we need family, friends, and witness cooperation so we can hold these people accountable. We need to get anybody who would do this type of indiscriminate firing into a crowd of people off the streets, and we need all the assistance that we can get, including from friends and family that were at the gathering. Violent crimes, we're actually doing quite well with our clearance rate. The FAST team, firearms assault team, has about a 69% clearance rate. Our major crimes division with the homicides has an exceptionally high clearance rate as well. If we're talking about low-level crimes, many of those are being ordered into court, so that way we can reduce the spread of COVID-19. Well, we're talking about violent crime right now. We need the community's help to address the surge in violent crime. As you heard from Dr. Nicoletti, we think there is a connection to COVID-19, the fear, stress, anxiety, the anger that's related to the multiple crises that we see, both the global pandemic, the economic crisis, the social unrest, and now this surge in violence. We need to do something about that. When it comes to holding people accountable for violent crimes, the Major Crimes Division, our Special Operations Response Team, they are working tirelessly to get individuals who think that it's okay to fire a gun into a crowd that includes children. We will do everything humanly possible to hold those folks accountable for those types of crime. If we're talking about low-level offenses, we're talking about a shoplifting, for example. Does it make more sense to order that person into court and keep them out of the Denver City Jail to reduce the spread of COVID-19? The answer today to that type of question is yes, it makes more sense to reduce the spread, to really focus on those that are committing harm to our vulnerable populations. Correct. Thanks, David. Thanks.
I'm going to try to address it. Historically, when victims of crime don't want to cooperate with law enforcement, there might be a fear of a gang element. I know you've said that you don't want to point that or you can't connect it, but can you help us understand why this family is not cooperating?
We will continue to ask for the assistance of the friends and family from this particular incident to gain their assistance. As we stated earlier, we cannot connect that dot to say this is a gang-related incident.
Are the 311 and 12-year-olds from the same family, or are they from separate families?
I don't have that information right now. Go ahead, John.
And again, I'm looking at it from a psychological. If you have somebody who's not complying after an event like that, there's going to be three reasons. One is they look at law enforcement as an adversary rather than an advocate. Second is they look at the consequences for being a snitch in terms of, geez, I don't want to tell what's going to happen to us. You all can't protect us. Three is it's too traumatic to talk about it for little ones. And fourth is, and that kind of ties in, it's the culture of the family or the group there not to talk about those things. So I think those are, from a psychological standpoint, for.
So, Dr. Nicoletti, if the family's watching right now, you're an expert here. What do you say to them?
I'd say, well, we need your help in mitigating this. If you feel law enforcement is adversarial or an advocate, what do you need them to do for you to feel trusting enough to talk to them? And what needs to happen for you to feel safe in order to talk? Well, some of the things, yeah, I do a lot of threat assessments, but I haven't been involved in this case in terms of motivation. And I mean, the DPD has a good intel unit in terms of looking at that. Yeah, not in this case. When they call me in, I do, but they're pretty skill set.
Chief, is there any way to know if this case was connected to any past cases? Was this an ongoing situation that you were aware of?
Again, we go into these types of investigations with an open mind. We constantly look for connecting those types of dots to any type of past incidents. Really, our focus right now is identifying the individual or individuals responsible for this crime and holding them accountable. Like the mayor said, it's not okay. It's not okay in Denver for somebody to fire indiscriminately into a crowd of people that has children in the presence. And we see what can occur when a 3, 11, and 12-year-old are shot in our city. So our primary focus right now is to be as open-minded as possible, to get as much assistance and cooperation from the community in order to hold these individuals accountable for this crime.
Was more than one gun
Again, not getting into the details of the case, I can tell you that the Major Crimes Division is working this tirelessly in order to address that.
You mentioned this idea that a crime happens and then people might think it's okay to commit a similar crime and you're worried about that. Will there be any changes, and I know you said you need the community's help, but also will there be any changes to DPD's tactics to sort of nip that in the bud, more patrols, anything like that?
Yes.
The public might be able to see?
David, thanks for asking that question. Absolutely. I can tell you that we have our citywide team that's actually in the neighborhood right now. They go out with a mental health clinician because we're also looking at the trauma to the neighborhood, right? The residents that live across the street from the park, they have been witnesses to a traumatic event, and we want to make sure that they get the assistance necessary to help them through this very difficult time. So that's one level of response. We also use data, day of week, time of day, any historical data that we can, and then we use that data to change the tactics and the response in order to give us the best possibility for success. And in this particular instance, we look at the individual incident itself as well as the bigger picture, and we make those changes, and we have made changes relative to this particular incident.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about this sort of acute incident, this one, but I'm talking about citywide. We'll also be seeing similar things citywide.
Correct. We have identified as Saturday night as being the most prevalent day of the week for gun violence, followed by Wednesdays. We identified the hour in which these are most prevalent, the areas, the hot spots, far northeast, East Colfax, West Colfax, South Federal, and again, we utilize data, the aggregate data, to identify how we can best deploy the resources that we do have for these types of issues.
I think another elephant in the room, which is there's sort of this distrust in police nationally, locally, but we probably haven't seen before, at least not in my lifetime. How do you balance what you say you need to do from a law enforcement perspective with this idea that's circulating and that has a lot of people angry?
David, again, great point. It is critical that this police department and this community rebuild and strengthen relationships. It's vitally important for our community, particularly our vulnerable community. Our vulnerable community in Denver are the folks that are disproportionately impacted by violent crime. We need to work together to build trust. Similar to what the mayor said, the community can't do this by themselves. The police department can't do this by themselves. And we have to come together to address this. It is not okay. It is unacceptable for a 3-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old to be shot in our city. And we need to do something about it. We need to do something about it now before this gets worse.
Sometimes money brings information. Is there a reward being offered on Crime Stoppers for critical information?
Yes, Crime Stoppers is, as the mayor stated, a way to, one, remain anonymous, and that can be helpful to breaking a case, and then two, there's a reward in order to help further an investigation. And as a reminder, 720-913-STOP. You can remain anonymous, and you can also receive an award, cash award. Thank you very much. Again, thanks for your assistance on this. We need as much awareness on this issue as we can get. Appreciate you. We utilize all bits of information that we can get.